For more on today's report, we are joined by Joe Stork, Deputy Director of the Middle East and North Africa Division of Human Rights Watch, and he joins us from Washington. Good to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Hamas today called your report biased and false. What do you make of their reaction?
Well, the reaction is pretty typical. I mean, our reports, we work in about 70 countries around the world, and I can't think of a single time where we've criticized a government or a governing authority and they said, oh, gee, you're right, or yeah, you got that right. I mean, of course, they react and say we're biased, things like that. When we actually sit down and talk with the people responsible, in this case, Hamas authorities in Gaza, it's a different kind of conversation. They don't necessarily admit to the violations we enumerate in the report, but I can tell you it's a different kind of conversation. It's not an unusual reaction. It's the kind of reaction we get from the Israeli government when we publish reports critical of their behavior.
Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. This rocket fire has been going on for years. Largely now it seems to have ceased. Why would this report be put out now?
Well, first of all, this is part of a series of reports we've done on the conflict, on the war in Gaza that erupted in December, January, a few months ago. So this is part of that series, and it looks at that sort of window, that sort of 2 or 3 month window of that conflict. Secondly, it's important to note that rocket fire has ceased in previous times. In fact, last summer, there was kind of an informal truce between Hamas and Israel, and there was virtually no rocket fire until early mid-November. So the issue here is not just that it's a past tense. The issue here is what happens in the future. We have no commitment yet. We hope we get it. There's no commitment yet from Hamas that they will not resume this kind of fire targeting civilian areas in Israel. That's what we want. We want that kind of commitment.
Hamas often defends their actions by pointing out the great disparity between their firepower and Israel's firepower. During that offensive, you mentioned more than 1,100 Palestinians were killed, 13 Israelis were killed. How do you react to that?
Applying the laws of war, international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions, to an armed conflict situation, it's not about counting casualties. It's about protecting civilians. It's about directing, investigating violations by all sides to a conflict and pointing out, criticizing those actions which target civilians, which represent indiscriminate attacks against civilians, which fail to take precautions to protect civilians. We've done that looking at Israeli military conduct. We're doing that with regard to Hamas military conduct.
Only about 20 seconds left. Human Rights Watch, as you point out, has been critical of Israel, and it has received some characterizations as being unfair. How do you respond to that?
Well, again, we want Israeli behavior to change. This is a typical reaction. They reject our criticisms. We're going to continue to make them where they apply.
Joe Stork, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.